There's a great diversity of thought within the church, of course, and largely it can be characterized within the scope of dogmatism. And there's dogmatically conservative perspectives to a fault, where people will die on the hill of the conservative candidate without thinking through the legislation themselves. Um, really, and there's a wide scope of things, that doesn't mean that there aren't equally passionate Christian liberals as well. As far as the response to political candidacy within the church, I mean, jury's out. That there are church communities who widely accept and promote candidates. There are some that are hesitant to even speak of such topics from the pulpit, which I think there's a good conversation to be had about whether and when that is appropriate. Ultimately, as people of the church and people of the book, uh, the conversation that we've had thus far concerning law and the conditions of the heart, it makes me think of the words of Christ, because if we're Christians, we should look first to Christ and not even the church. And what Christ says in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, he says, I haven't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So he's obviously pro law. And then how many times do we see in the subsequent text when the religious leaders, the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes and rulers of the law are testing him and challenging Christ's own understanding and application of the law, so much so that when we get to chapter 9, Jesus says, in response to them scrutinizing him healing on the Sabbath, he says, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And sacrifice, of course, in the context of the law that they're abiding by, is the letter of the law. But mercy is the heart of the Father. And that's how Christ can, going back in Scripture again, Christ can say, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second best commandment is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. These commandments sum the law and the prophets. So when we legislate a conduct or morality into writing, certainly that should be our goal and the focal point of our purposes, whether it be as voters who are congregants of the local church and of the Big C Church of Christ, like Representative Williams mentioned, or if we are the legislators and we are the representatives and elected officials, we should be of one accord to that end, so long as we bind ourselves first to the kingdom as our allegiance and next to the country, which we certainly have lots of room for patriotism within the Christian faith as well.